It is once again a pleasure for me to be welcoming you all to this very special association that we have with the Western Sikkim district. So the program, which is the Leadership Ecosystem Development for Character Building and Entrepreneurship, to us at the center is one of the most impact-worthy programs that are specialized at the center, where we are looking at providing an experimentation platform for leadership practice in action. So we've got two very clear buckets, two very clear aspects. And in the phase one of the program, which is where we did the 5 sessions with Professor Vishal Gupta and with Professor Asha Kaul, we basically looked at addressing building the capacity for character, for positivity, for resilience, for emotional intelligence, and a sense of meaning in the lives of the young leaders that all of us are tomorrow going to be. And today we move on to the second most important aspect of the program, which is phase 2, which is where across the next 5 sessions, which are actually scheduled through the month of March and early April, we're going to be looking at various concepts in the space of entrepreneurship. One of which that we're going to be starting out with today is on the area of design thinking, ideation, opportunity development. We follow it up with a session on finance and accounts, which is where we look at understanding the basics of accounting and finance. This will be spread across the next 2 sessions. And then we once again have a session on business modeling, business model canvas, which is where we look at understanding how to make money, how to grow money, how to understand the nuances of the startup ecosystem. And we finally top it up, I think, on around the 1st of April, with a final session on marketing before we recollect again to review what we've done across the 2 phases of the program. It is my pleasure to welcome one of the senior most professors here at IIM Ahmedabad, Professor Amit Karna, who's a specialist in all of these areas, whether it is entrepreneurship, design thinking, and he's going to be doing the session not only of today, but also of 23rd March when he comes back to look at explaining to us what the concept of business model canvas and business modeling is all about. Over to you, Amit, and thank you very much for taking out time and joining us.
Thank you, Piyush. Is my voice audible?
Yes.
Okay. So a very good afternoon to all my young friends in Sikkim. I hope all of you can hear me. If you can hear me, please raise your hands. So we will talk about entrepreneurship, and I think one of the major reasons why this team has put together the topics that they have is because everybody has great expectations from this future generation, in the sense that you are going to lead the country, you are going to lead the country in different ways, and one of the ways that you are likely to lead all of us into the future is going to be by forming very successful businesses. Right? So when we say that you have to form successful businesses, I'm sure you have all heard about very successful companies such as Google, Apple. In India, you must have heard of companies called Paytm, even not just the new type of companies, but also the large corporations that you would have seen, such as Tata's, Birla's, Mahindra Group, and so on. Right? So over the next 1 month, all the sessions are going to be addressing issues which are going to be around the concept of how do you become a very successful businessman or a businesswoman when you grow up. One thing which I was just looking at yesterday in one of our incubators board meeting is that almost 40% of the successful companies are built by students. And this is important for all of you to know, because while you are learning or doing your studies, you should look around what are the skills that you are getting from there, be it a subject like maths, physics, geography, any subject that you're looking at. What is it that you are learning? Because you're building a skill when you are in a school. And after that, you look around when you go home, when you are interacting with your family, with your extended neighborhood, look around the problems that are there around us. And one of the major ways of preparing a good business is to find a good problem. So when you look around, so if you are able to look at a problem, solve the problem, that is basically how the businesses flourish. So for those of you who are joining late, again, a very good afternoon. And the first session today we will talk about is how do you find an opportunity? And I will actually tell you what really is the meaning of an opportunity. But we will try to focus on how do you look at a problem, and then how do you find out that this is a problem that if I solve it, I will become a successful entrepreneur. Now, you must have heard me talk about entrepreneurship. Piyush sir talk about entrepreneurship quite a lot. So let me bring this down, and those of you who have a dictionary back home, go back and check the word entrepreneurship. It will be helpful to understand what entrepreneur means. Basically, entrepreneurship is a very simple activity. It is entering a business. If you run a business, if you run an organization, then you are supposed to be called as an entrepreneur. But there are two things which make entrepreneurship fairly exciting and challenging at the same time, which is there in the definition. If you can read the definition, the activity of setting up a business, taking on financial risk in the hope of profit. Okay. Now, of course, in the world, there are two types of entrepreneurship. One is commercial entrepreneurship, other is social entrepreneurship. I will not get into the classification and definition of both, but any business that anyone does, you want to enter a market in order to solve some problem for some set of customers. And for that, because you don't know whether their problem is going to work, there is a risk involved in that. And once you are able to look at that opportunity to take the risk, you do so if you are convinced or if you have a plan in place to ensure that eventually you will be able to make profit out of it, or at least recover the costs that you have put in so that the business is not dependent on any third party and it is kind of self-sustaining. So I was told that many of you had the opportunity to open a food business, right? So what were you doing? You entered a restaurant business, which is kind of a small set of a restaurant, by taking on financial risk, because you would have bought some material, you would have bought some equipment, you would have cooked something in which you would have spent time on it. So that was the financial risk that you took, that you had to put money there. Somebody put money there, either you or somebody else. And what was the hope? That there will be more customers coming because you are giving them certain value. And after that, the number of amount of rupees that you will earn from that sales will be more than enough to not just cover your cost, but also make an additional sum out of it. In some businesses, maybe the purpose is not to make profit. In those kind of businesses, you simply say that I will cover my cost. But in many of the businesses which are run because you also need to earn money and take care of your own future needs, you would also want to make profit. Therefore, whenever we will talk about over the next 1 month, we will try to see how you can take financial risk in order to, or in the hope of making profit. That is, in a way, entrepreneurship. Now, the way we have designed the program, or the next 4 or 5 sessions, is where you will get to understand how to calculate profit, how to increase the likelihood of success and thereby reducing the risk. We will share with you some ideas of how to use technology to do it, how to become larger in a very fast manner, how to reach to more customers in form of marketing. So all of those things will be kind of discussed with you every Tuesday in one form or the other. Okay. So what you should do today is make your notes, but at the end of the session, I will also give you some homework so that you can go around and try out some of the things that we are going to discuss today. And I will also keep on mentioning which are the things that you should note down so that it will be helpful for you to refer back to those notes when you are going through the other sessions over the next 1 month. So first thing I would want you to note down also is the definition of entrepreneurship, which is the activity of setting up a business, taking on financial risk because you don't know what the future is, in the hope of making profit. Now, one of the things that you would have seen around you, so I'm sure every one of you has seen some or the other entrepreneur, right? Either in your family, among your parents, among your uncles, aunts, your anybody who is doing a business, who is buying something, selling something, and surviving based on that and making profit based on that is entrepreneur. Now, what you see is that they're running a business, but what you don't get to see, especially because you might not have seen them from the beginning, how they came up to set up this. So any shop you go to is an entrepreneur. Any restaurant you go to is an entrepreneur. Whether the video game parlors or game zones that you go to, all of those are entrepreneurs. But what is not known by many of us who are seeing entrepreneurship around us is that these people have not always been successful from day one. What makes entrepreneurship really exciting and challenging is that it is about experimenting. In your science class, you do experiments, right? You kind of take one material, mix it with other material, and something happens. The only difference here is that you are told in your science lab that this is the material, you add, you electrolyze a salt, you get sodium hydroxide and water and chlorine out of it. But in entrepreneurship, there is no set mechanism that tells you that if you do these three things, this will happen. And therefore, one has to keep on trying something, seeing what the results are, and very difficult, but most importantly, learn from the results and try again and again and again. This activity of experimenting, looking for learning, looking for successes, is basically what is called as the pursuit of opportunities. Pursuit is another word for search. So entrepreneurs are basically, when you were a kid, you might be remembering you played this game called treasure hunt, right? So there is a treasure being hidden somewhere. This is exactly the same. Just that there is no map, there is no clue. You need to find clues. Where is the next step and where is the final treasure? Some competitors, like some companies like Google, Netflix, Facebook have found the treasure. Some others are on the way to finding that treasure. And therefore, the reason we are talking to you here today is to help you minimize the time and your effort and anxiety to be able to find the treasure much quicker, much better than anybody else across the world. Okay, so that is the kind of a challenge that I'm throwing at you, that you will have to experiment, you will have to find the next clue, and then finally look for where is the treasure at the end of this. And as we all know that, when we used to play when we were kids, this game of treasure hunt, it is not magic, right? It is not that somebody has put the treasure there. We know that it is kind of set over there, and all we need to do is, we need to find out. We need to learn what we had done last time and therefore do it better this time and therefore find it better. You would have also noticed or remembered from your days when you played a treasure hunt that usually a single person will not win it, a team will win it. Similarly, in entrepreneurship also, teams are usually more successful than individual entrepreneurs. Okay, but all said and done, it has been known now for the last almost 40 years that entrepreneurship is a discipline. It is like a discipline like, let's say, commerce, science, economics, that it can be learned. Earlier, it was understood that, oh, well, entrepreneurship is is something which is like a family oriented. Anybody cannot become an entrepreneur. Only a business person's son or daughter can become an entrepreneur, and therefore it is not something that everybody should look at. Peter Drucker, the management guru since 1985, has been saying that entrepreneurship is a discipline, and like any other discipline, can be learned. And that is going to be our very quick kind of attempt over the next 1 month to help you learn this discipline called entrepreneurship. Okay. Now, what you need to do as a person first is that you need to be able to learn to be comfortable. You don't need to be slide here, but you need to be comfortable with 3 things. The first one is, what does the society need? Okay. The second thing is, am I satisfied as an entrepreneur in providing a solution for this need? And the third thing is that, is it going to be economically viable for me to provide this thing? Okay. I'll keep going back to your food example. There is hunger in the society, so there are people, human beings get hungry twice a day, thrice a day, 4 times a day. Am I able to provide it because I have a food business? I like making food, I like selling food. I was told to do food, so therefore, for personally, I can do it. And third, it is a sustainable business only if you are able to recover your financial risk. Otherwise, there is no meaning in doing an entrepreneurship or a business where you are just burning money. I think the whole idea is that you deliver some benefit to the customer, and the cost that you will incur in order to deliver the benefit, you recover that from the customer. Okay. Now, in order to understand the society, you will have to understand what are the needs of different people around you. What do they need? What do they want? What do they desire? How does the lack of that thing impact people? If there is no food, people get hungry, and therefore they start developing different disorders if they are hungry, and therefore you are looking at what do people need. Similarly, for example, electricity. People need electricity. People need more of electricity. People need more of technology. I'm sure if you look around in your school, in your at your home, everywhere you will see that there are needs which are not met. So there are some needs that are met. You need a uniform. Somebody is already supplying those uniforms. But there might be some needs that you have which nobody is meeting them, and you are living with those needs. Those unmet needs are something that you will have to start now looking for. What is it that is a person around you in your locality needs but is not getting? Okay. It could be, for example, your friends are not getting a place to play, or somebody is not getting a transportation to go to some place. It could be any need, but think about it, what people need. Second, you have to think about whether it is possible to fulfill that need in some reasonable expenses. And most importantly, is it a need for which people will be ready to pay? Otherwise, this might be something, yes, it's good to have, but I'm not going to pay for it. So you will have to find some, like food, I like a certain type of dish and I would like to pay for it, and therefore that willingness to pay is something which is important to look at. And then finally, you need to also, and as you now grow over the next 7-8 years, you will also become adults and start taking your life decisions. You will have to also define what is it that you want to do in life. What is it that you would define as my success? There are many people who have different definitions of success, right? Some people want to have a great life. Some people want to earn a lot of money. Some people want to learn a lot. Some people want to serve the country. Some people want to serve the needy, any need that you have. So what is it that will be your definition of success? What is it that you would like to achieve what are your relationships, your parents, grandparents, siblings, your friends. How is it that they want your help and how can they help you? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? If you want to become an entrepreneur, you will require some answers to these questions for yourself. If you don't have, try to start looking for these questions, because that will help you in determining a sweet spot between the three. What the society needs, is it economically viable to provide that? And can I provide that to my satisfaction? Which will be profit, but also other things more than just financial profit. Okay. Now, the problem here is that it is very easy to say this in a chart, that these are entrepreneurship and society, economic and personal satisfaction, but how do I get there? Now, as I told you on the earlier slide, that it is about experimenting. Okay. Now, there is a lot of work that has been done in this field, and management scholars have looked at successful entrepreneurs, they have looked at failures. But what they have found out is that the journey of a successful entrepreneur usually goes through 2 or 3 steps. Okay. So the first stage of that steps is, how do you find an opportunity? Right. So everybody must have heard of this company called Paytm. Now, how did they kind of come to that thing that it is a good opportunity that people will scan and make payments? How do you even reach that? I had a camera in my phone, but I never thought of this, that this should be a good way of paying. Now, there are different ways in which you would identify an opportunity, as we call it. This is going to be a second kind of thing to note down, that there are 3 stages through which an opportunity goes. So if you want, you can also note this down, that entrepreneurship is at the interface of societal needs, economic viability, and personal satisfaction. But now let's look at, so there can be any idea. I today have an idea that maybe there should be a drone that will fly over Sikkim and will provide rain to everyone. It's an idea. Ideas, I'm sure if I ask you, all of you, to pick a pen and paper and write down some ideas of how you would like your future life to be, you will list down at least 50 ideas. I have an idea that I would like to keep my phone here and it will get charged automatically. I have an idea that when the cars run, they should generate their own fuel and not rely on petrol, diesel, or electricity. Right? So I have all of these ideas. Having ideas is an extremely important and a great start to becoming an entrepreneur. Step number 1, therefore, is ideation. You should ideate. And I'm going to, after I complete the slide, I will share more in today's session around how do you ideate, how do you design interesting ideas, not just think of them. Now, how does one convert an idea into a possibility? As in, one literally can't convert an idea into a possibility, but one has to look at all the ideas possible and then find out which one of these are real ideas. That's something that you and I can get those into market. So for example, if today I say that I would like to go back into 1940s, well, it is a great idea, but maybe not that real given the current state of science. Time travel, many years people have been trying to work on it. So if I want to now go into future, great idea, but so far there is not much science that is supporting it. Finding the realness of an opportunity is important. Next is durability. Will there be more people wanting to go to past or future? If not, then maybe it's not a great idea. Okay. So you look at these points here in the box, that if the idea is real, it will last for a longer time because it has a demand which is fairly large. Am I able to get resources in order to implement the idea? there's marshalling the resources. Will I be able to manage this venture that I'm planning of? And finally, will I be able to sell this to the customer to make money out of it? Even if the answer to this is kind of, well, I don't know, I have to find out, it is good enough idea to take up an experiment. You will not find one idea which has all the boxes ticked. Okay? But at the same time, if you have some boxes ticked here and some which are definitely, you know that none of the answer is no to this 4 or 5 questions, then you can say that, okay, well, it's a great idea. I think it can be a possibility. Now, that possibility needs to be then converted into an opportunity by asking yourself and your team that, is this possibility fitting into my idea of future, my goals? Am I able to do something around it because it is my capability? I learned logistics and therefore I can make something around logistics entrepreneurship. Then you know that your capabilities are aligned with what you are trying to do. Will it be okay for my lifestyle, the amount of money I want to earn and the amount of spending that I want to do? My travel preferences, my stay preferences, will it align with that? And finally, will it align with the values of my relationships, which is my family, my friends? Would I be kind of, if I'm seen as an entrepreneur pursuing this opportunity, would I be seen as a legitimate member of my society? Right? So my relationships, how will they pursue this possibility into an opportunity, something good to follow? Right? So this is what I would like you to think about over the next 2-3 weeks. Think of some wild ideas that you have had. Some very, very wild ideas which you believe might or might not be true, but start looking at those ideas and then start filtering them down by saying that, is there science supporting that, can this be done? So for example, I remember there was one student who came to us several years ago and said that, I will use this kind of material and create its liquid and try to use it as a fuel. So, but when he tried that science, it didn't work, and therefore that idea was never become a possibility. But many other ideas are such that they will be very easily becoming possibilities. So find out some ideas which you think have the potential of becoming possibilities. And then if some of you are actually taking up entrepreneurship, you can also see how it aligns with your goals, your capabilities, lifestyles, and relationships, and actually find an opportunity over there. Okay. Now, let me pause here. If you have any questions, please send it to your teachers, and I will take those in the break and then maybe try to respond those. Any questions around idea, possibility, opportunity, or the definition of entrepreneurship, please write it down and give it to your teachers. Let's then move to the second part of this, how to really use a tool called design thinking. Right? Now, I am sure everybody knows what a design is. Right? You have a nice design of your uniform that you are wearing. This is a nice visual design on the screen of an idea, colorful idea. The room that you are sitting in is also designed in a certain way. Right? The trees outside are designed in a certain way. The mountains are designed in a certain way. Just look around you. Human beings are designed in a certain way. Right? We have 2 extra limbs because of evolution from monkeys. We have a structure that helps us to stand on 2 legs, making these hands redundant for walking, and therefore we find different uses for that. So all of these designs that we see around us, look at the trees outside, they are designed. It's every plant that you see. So the whole point here is that if everything is designed, then what really is design? Okay. So again, going back to a definition of design, it is something which is a plan or a way of doing things. Okay. But usually, not always, but usually we confuse this with something called a visual design. Something which is fancy, appealing to your taste, colorful, appealing to your eye, and so on. The founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, very, very famously talked about design very, very passionately. For him, design is something that works. Okay? I just picked up a bottle of water, drank a water and kept it here. Now, this design of a disposable water is such that it works very, very well for me. You and I, we can carry it wherever we are going, fill it up, lock it, drink from it, do whatever we would like to do it because it is working. The design is really something that not how it only looks like, but how it works. If it's a computer, it should work and help me reduce my inefficiency. It should improve my productivity. If it's a mouse, then it should work in a certain way that it is helping us achieve the objective of easier browsing. But if you really think around, just look around you, everything is designed. The jacket that you're wearing, the shirt that you're wearing, the tie, the glasses that people are wearing, the floors below where you are sitting, the mask is designed in a certain way to cover our mouths and noses. Computers are designed, everything that we see around us is designed, either naturally or a man-made, human-made design. Okay. Now, why I kind of elaborated a little bit more on design, because I'm now going to move away from what really is a design is to how to design a successful business. For that, in today's session, we'll talk about how to design ideas so that they are fairly well then captured into a good opportunity. Okay, so that's why the topic name was ideation through design thinking. Now, one of the things we talked about designs quite a bit, but one of the things that David Kelly in about 80s he founded a design company called IDEO, and their whole notion was that we are not designers. If you want designers, you will get them in fashion industry, in NID, in product design, and all the other disciplines. But for entrepreneurs and for managers alike, what we need to move from is being a designer to design thinker. Because if it was a design course, I would have had to call you here in Ahmedabad to do something with you. But because it is design thinking course, I can share with you how to think in a certain design thinking way, and then you can very easily work out a design outcome for yourself as well. What is design thinking? It is not just designing, it is design thinking. It is how do you think to create design. Firstly, it is user-centered. And I'll explain you in a minute why we say so. And it helps solve problems. As I said earlier, most of the successful companies are those who have solved problems. If you're not solving a problem, your chances of success are fairly low. Therefore, spend as much time as possible in order to first understand what problem is the user going through. Okay. I will maybe skip some of these in interest of time. But basically, design thinking is mostly people-centered. And then why is it people-centered? Because we are trying to solve problems of humans, and therefore they are people-centered. Highly creative, because many of our problems have been solved, and therefore we need to be creative to find out newer and newer problems that human beings face. Fairly hands-on. You will have to do certain activities that I will outline here to be able to do it. And iterative. Works in a loop, right? So loop is what iteration means. Those of you who don't understand the word, it is like how it works in a loop. One, people-centered, because people are the ones who have problems. And if you don't solve for them, they will not pay for it. And they will not pay for it, you will never have profit. Right? So therefore, one of the things that we always say is that be creative around people and not their consumption. This we already talked about, that it requires great creativity because things are not that easy currently. Hands-on. When I say currently things are not easy, it's because many entrepreneurs have already started. And you will be at a late mover disadvantage that you are starting a little later. So things won't be that easy. You will have to also work hard in order to find opportunities. The third thing, which is fairly good about this process, is it's very hands-on. And we can't do it in an online mode. But otherwise, there are lots of activities that can be done to understand design thinking in a much more nuanced manner. And as I said earlier, it is iterative, which goes back to entrepreneurship being experimentative, and therefore the iterative nature of design thinking approach helps in being very agile. Right? Now, in any normal business, you would do 4 steps. Have an idea, build the idea, then launch it in the market, learn from it, whether successful, not successful, and then go back and revisit the idea. Now, what design thinking does is that it kind of short circuits the other two, keeps on doing ideation, learning, ideation. So that kind of makes that inner cycle on this chart more effective and efficient, because it is quicker to do just this activity of ideate and learn. Why is design thinking hard? Because it is more or less all over the place. And I will give you some activities to go back home and do it. It will be very, very difficult for you to understand what you are doing. That's the idea of design thinking. Because if you continue to do design thinking and keep listening to what the market has said, you will find a sweet spot where everybody is converging, and you can maybe think of this as a solution. Okay. Now, when can this design thinking be helpful? It is not that, I'm facing one problem, so people are not coming on time because everybody stays very far away. Now, this problem doesn't require design thinking. And then you simply can shift the time by joining for those people who come from far away, and it solves the problem. It's not really that difficult. But sometimes when the problems are what we call as wicked, which is problems that are ill-defined and are tricky. If these are the problems that you are facing, then design thinking perhaps is the right approach to do it. Second, not every problem is a wicked problem. Some are very, very straightforward problems. Straightforward problems require straightforward solutions. You will not be able to get an additional benefit of using design thinking if the problem is not that interesting enough. Let's flip this slide. Now, let me go to the 5 steps of design thinking. And this is something I would want you to note down. In short, these are also called EDIPT phases. EDIPT. There are 5 steps to design thinking. First one, empathize. What does empathize mean? Empathize means to put yourselves into the shoes of somebody else. The first requirement of any entrepreneurial venture. Any startup you start, you would have to first empathize whether who is the customer, what are they looking for, why are they looking for what they are looking, and what is the problem that they're facing. Then comes define phase, ideate phase, prototype phase, and testing phase. Let me take you through each one of them one by one. So by the way, I would like you to write these 5 steps. You can also write very basic 5-letter word, EDIPT, EDIPT, EDIPT. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Okay, let's go one by one, and you will see that the chart is moving on the top right. So empathize is understanding the experience of the customer. Now, empathize means that you should know more than what the customer knows about himself or herself. Right? Some of the examples here are that, if people are looking for transportation, you should be able to find out that people are looking for transportation rather than they telling. You need to be ahead of the curve, and that's what is experienced in the current times, that you should be able to observe, engage, and watch and listen what is happening around you. Therefore, your first homework would be to go out and empathize with people around you so that you can understand what are the problems everybody is facing. One of the most important phase of design thinking. Second one, define. So it is said in Ahmedabad that if you have a good problem definition, you can solve pretty much any problem. Because if you are unable to solve, mostly it is because you have not been able to define the problem very, very sharp. Right? Therefore, it is very important to define. I will give you one example, one very, very common example. I am not sure if anybody has read this before or come across, but maybe some of you might have. NASA had sent their first mission to Moon. And as all of you would know, there is zero gravity on Moon. Because of which they were not able to write. There is no gravity, so you can't write like this. You have to write wherever the paper is. And they realized that there is, the pen doesn't work because the ink is not reaching the ballpoint pen. And they are supposed to have spent millions of dollars in developing an ink pen where the ink will be anti-gravity. So it will travel from bottom to top, or in any direction. And they were not able to find that because the Newton's law of gravity it's a law. It is applicable in every part of this planet. So what they did is they basically asked the Russians. I don't know whether this part is true again, but somehow they found that answer is not about finding an anti-gravity ink, but the answer was to use a pencil instead of a pen. Right? Now, why am I sharing this example? Because the solution actually depended on defining the problem. The problem wasn't to be framed as why is the ink not traveling? What was the main problem that they were facing? They are not able to write in the space. Right? So the better you define the problem, the better it is for you to get answers, solutions. Okay. So definition is the second step after empathy. Ideate. I already talked about this. You need to generate new solutions. The third step. Prototype. So which means that you take the solutions, finalize one or two of them, build a prototype, and then decide which one will you test in the market. Prototype is the process of creating something real out of the idea, and then test is how it works eventually in the market. Okay. So what we have said therefore is design thinking is a 5-step process. E for empathy, P for define, I for ideate, P for prototype, and T for test. I'll come back to the iterative process in a bit with an example. Now, this is a tricky one. And I'm not sure how many of you understand this, that when you create value, it costs you. When you give a gift to somebody, it costs you, right? So when you're preparing a value for somebody, it costs you. If you're able to understand what is it that the customer really wants, then I can actually lower my cost also. So usually people will go with the heart, what people want, and therefore the budgets will go totally out of control. And then once they go out of this, then the budget kind of comes down. And therefore this seesaw, because you eventually will have to find an opportunity or a business model which will help you to balance both what I like and what I also like to portray. Okay. Now, one of the things which I'm asking you to do is interact with people around you, right? So look at the demand of the society and so on. One mistake that common people make is using conventional wisdom, of course, that you should always talk to the majority users of your product or a service. So design thinking approach says that yes, this is right, or rather IDEO says that this is right, but you should also talk to non-users and extreme users. People who never use your product should also be spoken to. Understand why are they not purchasing your product. And at the same time, you should also talk to extreme users so that you can take your average users also towards the extreme users. Now, I already mentioned that design thinking is an iterative process. Let me share with you why I think so. And not just I, but even IDEO Design School at Stanford, all of us have a similar opinion. I told you earlier that entrepreneurship is about experimenting, which means you will have to go 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Next time, maybe 3 steps forward, 1 step backward. Then maybe 10 steps forward, 2 steps backward. In the process, you've already gone several steps ahead. Now, same thing in design thinking, whichever dotted line you see are going back, for example, this one, go from prototype and test to back to ideation phase. Because they are not generally working, and even if they're working, they are fairly distant. So if you're working, some ideas might work, some might not work, but you will have to either go back to the idea. Sometimes you might have to go back to the empathy itself. Maybe I didn't understand the customer's well. Maybe I did not define the problem well. There was another example I'll give you, like the NASA example of writing with a pencil. In a village, they wanted to build a bridge. They couldn't build a bridge because there was a restriction on whether you can, a very old ancient river, and therefore you couldn't mess around with the heritage site. So you will have to take a lot of permissions, and they were not, UNESCO was not allowing them to build a bridge. They tried out several ways, but nothing happened. Eventually, what happened was, one fine day, the local population said that, why are you fighting for a bridge? The problem that we are facing is that we want to cross the river, which means that if you can get a big ferry, which can, on which we can put our vehicles and we can get on it and move to the other side of the river, then my problem is solved. Now, they realized this after developing several prototypes of how a bridge can be built, one which will not have a column, one which will go below below the water and so on. They realized that it was not the correct problem that they had learned from observing the customer. The problem was not about building a bridge, the problem was about crossing the river. And if you knew the right problem, define it rightly, ideate around it, then prototype something and then test it out. Now, some of you might be actually wondering what is really this prototype. Have you seen those model aeroplanes, right? The small aeroplanes that that are lying there in the shops. Now, those are prototype of a large actual aeroplane, right? Let's say if you have a new building coming up. Remember, we see in the architect's house that there is a small building, a 3D model of a building. That's a prototype. Or in childhood, when we used to make those small houses with a box and a roof on it, it's a prototype, because we are trying to communicate that this is the same thing, but it is not actually the same thing. I can't live in it, but it still says that it's a house. Okay. Let me move forward a little bit on this. Now, when you move from empathy to defining the problem, ideating solutions, designing prototypes, and then testing them in the market, you are basically passing through phases. These 3 phases are also called exploratory, concepting, and prototyping phase. Now, between now and the next 23rd March, I would want you to mainly work on this phase, the first one. What is this phase? This phase is where you will have to define opportunities. How do you define opportunities? Look around you. What are the problems that you can solve? Just look around you in the society, in your family, friends, school, anywhere you can look around, find out what is it that you can solve. What we will then do later on in the session on 23rd, we will try to see if we can design a business around it using the other 2 phases. Okay. I'm going to skip a couple of slides and maybe focus on this one. Okay. So, what we have talked about today, I'm going to very quickly summarize. We started with a definition of entrepreneurship. The definition, if you have not noted down, please do so. It's the activity of setting up a business by taking financial risk in the hope of making profit. Second, we talked about how do you convert ideas, wild ideas, into opportunity. By asking questions whether it is real, it is durable, whether it's an opportunity that I should go after, and whether I am suitable to go after this opportunity, after this idea, then it becomes an opportunity. Third, we talked about design thinking. Design thinking is a process where you, in a circular fashion, keep following 5 steps. These are the 5 steps. Empathize, which means observe the customers, observe people around you. Define what are the problems that they are facing. Find out the solutions, ideate. Prototype, which is form something out of it, which we will talk about in the next session. And finally, test those ideas. Prototyping and testing of the ideas is something that we'll talk about in the next session on 23rd. Till then, you would do observation of people, see what problems they are facing, and how can you as an individual solve that problem. Through Piyush and team, we will try to float some kind of a template, which I will send to you. In that, you will have to draw and maybe write and keep for yourself some of the answers to the exercise that you will do on your own. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then maybe I will just spend some time, maybe 4 or 5 minutes on telling the students how do you find problem areas. Okay.
Right.
Now, how do you find problem? As in, let's face it, problems are there everywhere around us, right? Especially in the COVID times. So I'll give you one problem that I can see right now, currently in the schools. Everybody has to wear a mask. You wear a mask and therefore you can't see each other, and that's a. Now the problem is that I have to wear a mask. What should be the alternative? Has anybody thought about it? Maybe we have to find something which is an alternative to wearing a cloth mask. But that's a problem. And I'm not going to discuss about the idea for solution for it, but it's a problem. List down, right? You go home if there is, there are no new games for me. It's a problem. I go home and I see on the road there are people who are living but they have no home. That's a problem. I'm seeing that there are the people who have food but are unable to. So food is being cooked somewhere, but people are somewhere else. They're not able to match each other. That's a problem. You might have your elderly grandparents. They are living in some other place. We are living here. We can't see each other very often. That's a problem. There were people in COVID times. They were falling sick. They were being isolated by the government. We couldn't help them. They couldn't find their own help. That's a problem. Not just this, there could be even other problem. I want to learn coding. I can't learn it because I don't have access to any resource. It's a problem. So whatever is hindering everybody from achieving their desired aspirations or objectives is a problem statement for you. It could be basic, which is, as we call in Hindi, roti kapda makan, which is like the physiological needs and my very, very basic needs. Then there are kind of social needs. I would like to have better mobility, electric vehicles or faster cars at the next level, which is like, which is good to have in the society. And then there are higher level needs and so on. Think about wherever the needs are there, are the needs, are the wants, are the desires. But look at what people are needing, wanting, desiring, but are not available to get. That for you becomes a problem statement. So your main homework for the session on 23rd, before 23rd, I will send you one sheet through Piyush, which everybody can draw on that. But it will be, the focus will be on how do you empathize and define these two activities. Ideation, prototyping, testing, we will try to see how you convert this problem into an opportunity and then make money out of it. That will be the next session.